we're going to invite Mariane to share her screen. And Mariane Kiraly is a senior resource educator with Cornell Cooperative Extension here in Delaware County. She has decades of experience working with our farms here in farm management related issues. Lots of experience helping folks here. And I know she's prepared a great workshop for us today. So if you have questions, please don't be afraid to pop them in the chat, and then we'll get to those questions at the end. So Mariane, take it away.
Well, thank you, Dale. So welcome. I'll talk today a little bit about taking the guesswork out of product pricing. And it's something that that comes up fairly often in our workshops that we do with clientele who are either starting a new project, or if they are changing the way they're marketing their product. So how would I determine a fair price for my product? There are 3 factors in setting price: what it costs to produce, what customers expect, and what is the margin of profit that I'm looking for. So I'm going to start with a simple example, like a dozen eggs. Consider that 50 chickens lay 4 dozen eggs a day. They're fed $1 worth of feed each day. It takes a quarter hour to care for the chickens each day. It takes a half hour to clean and pack 4 dozen eggs per day. And the egg boxes and labels are 25 cents a piece. So that would be a total of $1. What are the total cash costs? These 50 chickens cost $10 each and will last a year. So their total cost per day is $1.37. So I've just worked that out over the 365 days. And hopefully those chickens, you know, they're great chickens and they each lay an egg a day. Hard to figure if they do or don't. The feed is $1, caretaking is a quarter hour. And so I have assigned a $15 an hour rate to my time, or anyone's time, for doing this. Now, this is up to you, but in order to get to the total cost of production of anything that you are doing, you need to assign a value to your time. Now, in New York State, the minimum wage is $12.50. But I would hope that as a farmer, you would think that your time is worth at least $15 an hour, and probably more. But I'm using that as an example today. Cleaning and packing the eggs is a half hour a day, or $7.50. The boxes and labels are $1. So the total cash costs for sale at the farm for the 4 dozen eggs, the total cost out is $14.62, or $3.65 a dozen. I'm sure that doesn't surprise anybody. So it costs $3.65 in cash costs to produce a dozen of eggs. If I charge $4 a dozen, I'm making 10% profit. I am paying myself the $15 an hour to tend this enterprise. But what if I have losses such as predators or disease? What about fixed overhead costs like utilities and taxes? I really need more profit to make it worth my time and to cover overhead and unanticipated losses. But how am I going to do that? How am I going to get more than $4 a dozen at this time? So we talk in our world about product differentiation. It may make my eggs worth more if I can make them special to the consumer. What can I do to market my eggs as better, healthier, or more environmentally friendly than store eggs? What about the fact that I pasture my chickens? It's great to pasture chickens. People want pastured eggs. But at the same time, that opens you up to losses, to wildlife and other things. The neighbor's dogs, for one. What about the fact that I have a variety of colorful eggs that please the eye? What about the fact that I use eco-friendly boxes instead of plastic or styrofoam? With these attributes, I should be able to fetch $6 a dozen because my customers value these things. So this is a classic, we see it around here. Product differentiation. I can buy store eggs that are white at the store for, I don't know, maybe $2.50 or $3 a dozen. Or I can go to the farmer's market. And personally, I have paid some pretty high prices at the farmer's market, but they were the eggs I wanted. So your profit strategy will vary by your market. Now, in a commodity market where there is no real perceived difference between the eggs, say at the grocery store, you get a market price based on industry costs of production and barriers to entry. So your profit is made by controlling costs and other factors that might limit competition or keep people out of the market. So really in a commodity market, you get a market price. Now, in a differentiated market, like we just talked about, you set the price. You set the price for your eggs, and people can buy them or not. It's the customer's willingness to pay, which is based on the attributes that you've put into these eggs and that you've labeled them as such, and your practices and everything else that goes along with those eggs. So in the beginning, you have to decide what market you're operating in. So what is the profit margin at $6 a dozen for eggs? So 6 minus the 365 is $2.35 a dozen, or 39%. Now remember, it doesn't include the overhead expenses yet. But the losses can be covered. Say, you have a few hawks come in and take some chickens. You can reinvest in new chickens, and especially after year one when you get all new chickens. And you can sell the old chickens at that point. And you could also have enough money to either pay the fee at the farmer's market, buy an egg washer, expand the business. So at 39% profit, you will be also covering your overhead expenses. So the lesson here is to know your market costs and what market you're operating in. I'm just going to move this out of the way. So we talked about cost-based differentiated markets. What markup over cost will give us a good return on the investment? They're generally less competitive markets, and you have figured out, especially now, we've had quite a change in the way we might market some products around here. During COVID, we've seen that the trends with shoppers are, at least here, if there's an alternative to going to the grocery store, they're going to go to a market, a farmer's market, or some other place. They might be going to farm stands much more, which they are. And they're looking for these products that not only meet their expectations for product attributes, they're not as concerned about the cost. And we found that out, just talking to folks. Now, if you choose a market-based commodity, what is the market price that you would have to work within? So say you decided, I'm not going to do farmer's market. I just want to have 500 chickens and I want to just market eggs. And I'm going to do such a good job. I'm going to be able to make those eggs, produce those eggs for $1 a dozen. So, but you will be a price taker. You're going to take the price that the Big M says they're going to give you for those eggs. Or maybe a price chopper or a larger store. So you have to be the value producer. You have to find the market first and then see if you can produce within those constraints. In general, you have to be the low cost producer. So when you're deciding to, maybe you have a new product, or maybe this is a good time of year to look at everything. Maybe you are going to decide, I'm doing market-based now. Maybe I should differentiate my product, or maybe I never told people that these are pastured eggs, or maybe I've been feeding organic feed, but I haven't been, stamping it on the box. Maybe I haven't certified organic. So those kinds of things will differentiate your product. That doesn't want to go. Oops, now it really went. Okay. So let's use a Thanksgiving turkey when we think about those two markets. Are all Thanksgiving turkeys sold for the same price? Local turkeys are usually sold for around $4 a pound, whereas a commercial store turkey could be as low as 59 cents a pound in a commodity market. Are all turkeys the same? Does everyone want the same kind of turkey? How would you price your turkey that you raised on your farm? So remember, we've got to do push the pencil on the inputs, and then figure out how much time we're spending raising that turkey. So it's just another example. We have local turkeys around here, and you really have to think about all those inputs that you're making to those turkeys. So the commodity pricing strategy, or market-based, you start with a target price. Like I said, with the eggs, maybe they're $2 or $2.50. We have to figure out what your costs are and how they compare to your competitors. Can you consistently be underbid? Your market advantages that provide a barrier to entry, like your reputation, your location, your infrastructure, they might allow you to keep your prices higher, but maybe not. So I want to talk about a commodity that we do here in Delaware County. Small square bales generally fit into market-based pricing. So let's consider those small square bales of hay. They weigh 40 pounds. They're 90% dry matter, baled in June in general. Maybe sells for around $4. I'm using these as an example, but I don't know if all the bales are sold for $4, but I would hope that they would at least be sold for $4, depending on the production costs for that stored bale of hay, which according to NASS and all the reports that I receive, the machinery costs and for storing that bale of hay are around $2.50. Now, what is the hay value? I'm saying the hay value has to be at least $1.50 when good hay is $200 a ton. I'm just doing the math. So what added value can you offer so that you can maybe get closer to $4.50? Could you assist people loading? You can guarantee no mold. Could you get certified organic and even get a bigger price? Sometimes supply and demand affect the price of the commodity. Like last year, people swept out their barns. I mean, there were no small squares by March, at least around here. And this year we had kind of a dry season for making hay. It was perfect for making the hay, but did we have enough hay? So one thing that I'd like you to think about is, and it bothers me too, that it's great when we have these tractor trailers coming in and buying hay and everything, but at the same time, they are making as much, or they're making more than the farmer is making, because they're taking this hay, and for transportation costs, they are doubling or more than doubling their money, 2 or 3 hours away. So I'm just saying that there could be some opportunity there to ask for a higher price. If everybody asked for a higher price, the hay buyers would have to pay the higher price. There's always somebody who's going to, cut their price or say, well, my time isn't worth anything, that kind of thinking. But really, around here, I think we could do a little bit better in our sales of small squares. It's just my opinion, but I'm thinking we could. Now, what about a beef example? We do have many beef farms in our area, and I'm going to use some assumptions here, and they may not be what is found on every farm, but we do have some great enterprise budgets that we can work with on a state level. And some of these numbers are pretty close. I'll just say that. So let's examine selling beef by the cut, quarter, half, or beef on the hoof. Assume that total cost of raising that animal, including overhead, from start to finish is $1,000. On a typical farm for a 2-year-old finished steer weighing 1,300 pounds. That steer could be sold at auction for $1 a pound on a good day, and the gross amount is then $1,300. You subtract commission and trucking, and the net is $11.95, and profit is $195. The only way to make money is marketing by volume, which is done in the Midwest. And even then, the risk of sending a beef animal to auction around here is huge, given that buyers could be fickle. They could discount animals for small defects. It may be, there could be a weather issue, and the buyers didn't show up. You've decided to sell your animals on a certain day, and it's just a bad day at the sale. I mean, this happens. We could sell the same animal to discriminating customers, which we do have a lot of new customers around here who may decide that they would like to venture out and buy their own meat. And there are more and more of them every day. So you could decide to add the cost of production to a markup or a profit that you want. So what about asking $1,500 for that beef animal on the hoof at the farm, and allowing the customer to take the animal to the processor and pay the custom cut? When you say custom cut, you can have this done to your specifications. It makes them feel important and empowered, and they can decide, do they want their steaks an inch and a half? Do they want, how many pounds of the roast and all that? Can you market this animal privately and net $500 instead of $195? Can you send the animal yourself to be processed and then charge by the cut, quarter, or half, at least to make a decent profit? And how price sensitive are your customers? So do they see value in having this animal cut to their specifications? Of course, they would also have to buy a freezer, but some people are really more than willing to do that. So think about that and the customers that you have. Talking about beef and halves, quarters, and cuts, we also have to add a lot of time, a lot of our time. So consider that the beef animal costs $700 to process. Now the total cost is $1,700. Halves could be sold for $1,250 each or $2,500 total. Quarters could be sold for $675 each or $2,700 total. Or cuts could be sold for as low as $6 a pound times 500 pounds, and $3,000 is the total. But this requires more time. But it does ensure a larger profit by choosing the differentiated rather than the commodity markets. And you would have to account also for the time spent and also depreciation on the equipment that you would need to do this, such as, freezer space, time at farmers markets, time finding customers. But at the same time, you could also do a combination of sending some to the sale that, you really just don't feel that they are up to par as far as maybe having enough fat cover, or you just might have too many. And then just doing some in one or more of these other marketing channels. So I have talked a little bit about fixed and variable costs. Your fixed costs and your variable cost, of course, add up to your total cost. Just a little quick chart there, take you back to your macroeconomic days. Using the beef example, the fixed costs for raising the beef animal, insurance, taxes, overhead are $100, and the variable costs are $900. It's just an example. Anybody's case could be more or less. On large beef farms, raising more animals reduces the fixed costs over a larger number of animals, and the variable cost may go down as well per animal given volume purchases for inputs. But around here, we're a group of small farms and we don't have a lot of industrial farms. So our area lends itself well to, product differentiation, or maybe a combination of both. So we talked about the variable and fixed costs. Just some examples of variable costs. You have the feed, the vet, labor, trucking, and marketing. The overhead costs are things like property taxes, insurance, other overhead and fixed expenses. So just be sure to include them when you're figuring up the cost of production. So what if you have several different enterprises? Think about a diversified poultry producer who has chickens for eggs, chickens for meat, and pullets for sale. Overhead should be divided between the enterprises using percentages to determine costs and returns. So you can estimate utilities, marketing, taxes, and feed percentages for each enterprise. And this is where records become very important. This is a good time of year to kind of take stock in what you're doing. And if you do have several enterprises, it's not a hard thing to do now in the beginning of the year to start allocating expenses as they come in an Excel spreadsheet or however you keep your books to the different enterprises. Because it does make quite a bit of difference at the end of the year when you see we brought in this much income for this enterprise and we brought in this much for this one, but then, and then the costs, and then the net for each one. So if you also do something totally different, like selling hay, you're only going to allocate haymaking expenses to the hay enterprise. Even though the chickens and pullets and things, they're going to use a little hay, but it's not really anything. You know, you could even buy that if you're buying straw or something. It's really just valuable to calculate your profit and loss on each enterprise using what we call enterprise budgets. They're just simple charts that you can use to track your cost. The percentages don't have to be perfect. Like I said, you know, you're buying in a ton of feed, you know, you can allocate it. It's not that hard. You do have to sit down and think about it, push the pencil a little bit. Sometimes you'll learn that one enterprise may be carrying another. We find that a lot. And the reason that is because some people already have the resources to do something, or they like to do it, and they're going to do it. Say it's a beef enterprise, and they love the beef enterprise, but they're not making any money at it. But they also have a maple enterprise, and they're making a ton of money at the maple. Well, the maple is carrying the beef, but you know, it's just good to know that. Now some people will drop an enterprise if we can put the numbers in front of them and say, well, one is making more than another. Or the other thing you can do is look at your cost of that enterprise and say, well, what can I change? What can I change about the beef enterprise to make it more profitable? And here's just a picture. I really like maple products, and any chance I get, you know, I look at displays and things like that. And maple producers are good examples of folks who might, they might be a commodity producer and sell barrels of maybe lower quality syrup to, you know, in the commodity market. But then with the rest of the syrup, they're doing all these value added products. But even within the value added products, there may be, you know, maybe the making the cream is extremely expensive, but everybody wants it, of course. And maybe it's more profitable to put all the syrup into quarts. But then you have these customers like myself who are going to still ask the question, do you have maple cream? So if I can buy maple cream for $10 a pound, I'm always going to buy it. Why? Because I realize that what goes into that maple cream is probably more than $10 worth of labor and syrup. It's a value to me. So it's just something to think about when you're you know, doing the calculations. So I did want to show just a quick example, and the print is really small, but it's an enterprise budget for carrots, and you know, it just goes down through, and I can always send you enterprise budgets for different things. And there's certainly many enterprise budgets that you can find on the internet at extension sources that are already set up in Excel files. And so what you can do here is you can set up an enterprise budget. And if you use one that's already done in an Excel spreadsheet, you can make changes and it recalculates for you. So it's just, you know, it's just a tool, but you don't need to reinvent the wheel. If you have a beef enterprise and want an enterprise budget, you can look for one. I can send you one. So just know that they're out there and they're simple to use. So in my work with farmers, I find that farmers generally underprice their products more often than they overprice their products. Why? They don't value their time as much as they should. And it's just a classic farmer oh, well, I didn't spend that much time, or I love doing this, etc. But when we push the pencil, when we look at, comparing enterprises and what it's costing and overhead costs, it's important to do, just so for your own knowledge. You can't be profitable if the prices are always below the total cost of production. In the short run, you can make some cash flow, but in the long run, you can lose money for every widget you produce. So think about that as we continue on this explanation. So I like charts. I like looking at things in color. Try to stay in the green when you're pricing your product. Break even is okay, but it's not giving you anything. We really need to be in these businesses to make money, unless it's a hobby for you. And hobbies are fine. There's nothing wrong with having a hobby, but if you're in it to make money, try to stay in the green. Don't just break even. Add something for your time, make a little money. So I've talked about price setters, price takers. In general, the direct-to-customer retail sales of farm products are in a price-setting environment. You put a price tag on it. Nobody's coming to the farmer's market and dickering with you, usually. Maple producers can be price setters at a farmer's market, like I mentioned, or they're price takers when they're selling barrels of syrup on the open market. Dairy farmers are generally price takers, selling wholesale, generic milk to a volume buyer. Whereas a niche organic grass-fed dairy producer, any of those, are offered a set price for a year that they can either accept or reject. So they're sort of a hybrid of a price setter and price taker. I mean, once they accept the offer, they are, taking that price for a year. But it's a little bit different because they have an option. So I did want to mention that I borrowed a couple slides from Elizabeth Higgins, who works in Eastern New York with the veg team, and she's very well versed in vegetables and CSAs. So with permission, I have these next 5 slides that I'd like to show you about setting a price for a CSA market shares. CSAs are very popular. They became a little bit maybe more popular during COVID. And we have 3 types of CSAs that I'll just talk about here. And we're going to talk about the market for the CSAs, the customers for the CSAs, and the cost structure. So what is the market? In anything that we're doing, anything that we're selling, you really have to do your market research. So with CSAs, you might look at other CSAs. What are they charging? What are they providing? Where are they located? And you can develop options for your own business. But you also need to talk to people who are prospective customers. What would they want in a CSA? What do they want in their bag every week? So who are the customers, and are you going to sell a differentiated kind of product, or are they going to be a commodity? So there's a couple ways you can do that. The value CSA is a low price delivery to work site, small bag focus on crop staples. So these are just examples that you might think about. They're $500 a share. There's a farm market CSA that gives a customer a declining balance card paid at the start of the season, good for produce at the farmer's market. So at the farm market CSA, they kind of choose their own stuff and they come to the farm market. And that's $300 a share. Or you can go high end with the gourmet CSA, which is, you know, you're doing a whole lot for these folks. Home delivery, fancy packaging, customer selection options. Every week they can change, and unusual product mix, including flowers, herbs, unusual crops. So this is premium at $1,500 a share. Who are these customers? So with the value in market CSA, there's more customers who could pay, you know, 300 or 500. But they are more price sensitive. You may get people coming and going in those. The gourmet CSA certainly has fewer customers. They're harder to replace. They're less price sensitive. They're looking for quality. They want service. They want to pick what they want every week. And, you know, it could make you a little crazy too, if you're trying to provide this service. But as we can see, it's probably doable, especially if the profit margin is high enough. But, you know, there's also competition that we have to think about. So with these three, if you want to earn a profit of $35,000, this is what you would have to do in each of these to make that kind of money. For the market CSA, which costs you $150, your profit is $150. You would have to sell 233 shares to make that almost 35,000. So that's 233 shares. That's a lot of shares. But if they're coming to you at the market and doing their declining balance card every week, it's probably doable. Now the value CSA is 500. It's cost you 210. You're making 290. You've got to sell only 121 of those, but you've got to do more work. Remember, you're taking them to the workplace and that kind of thing. You know, you're delivering, you know, there's more work to it. The gourmet CSA at 1,500, it's going to cost you 615 to produce that. Your profit is 885, but you only have to sell 40. But you've got to do a lot of work for those 40 people. You know, you've got to do the fancy packaging, delivering to the home, time consuming. You know, it's a thought. There may be people who want that. Maybe you could do a few of those, you know, around here. Keep in mind that Delaware County is a really big place, and it takes a long time to get from one end to the other. It's a lot of driving. So really, pricing should not be a once and done activity. We talked about market research and cost analysis, how you look at your customer. Who are they? You need to talk to customers. You need to set a price that includes your, you know, fixed and variable costs. Look at sales, change the price maybe, see if other people are doing more or less. And it's just a continual process. As I said before, now is a really good time to sit down and look at things like where you sold the most product last year, who are those customers that bought a lot of product? Is there a way to capitalize on more products? Or you should also think about, did I have some real dud times or dud market channels that maybe took me a lot of time but didn't really profit? And remember, set a reasonable cost for your own personal time. Your time is an opportunity cost of doing business, or What else could I be doing with the time spent marketing my product? Be sure to apply reasonable cost to your time. You might even want to put down $20 an hour and see if you're making $20 an hour. You could work at the local factory for probably more than that. But to get an idea of your time and cost, think about how much you'd have to pay to get somebody else to do that work. You know, some people will not work for $12.50 an hour, or they will work for $12.50 an hour and do a lousy job. So you kind of have to think about that too. And with everything else, time is money. Even if you're retired and you say my time isn't worth anything, it is. It is worth something. You could be at the beach. You could be doing something else. So to me, put a value on your time. So price isn't the only consideration. You know, we probably have people on the call that produce a perishable product. Now, perishable products can be a little more challenging to, and vegetables are perishable to a point. Milk is perishable. Cheese can be perishable to a point. So people have farmers have gotten so that they maybe have a product mix. Like some cheese producers make a fresh cheese and an aged cheese. Well, that's really smart because, you know, if they were only making a fresh cheese, it would all have to go, you know, within a certain period of time. But when you're doing perishable crops, you may have to think of multiple ways during a season, like strawberry season, to effectively sell everything you produce and still make money, even though they're perishable. So I'll just give a quick example. And this is also from Liz because I really liked the idea. You know, strawberry season around here is pretty short. And it all comes to once in general, you know, sometime during June, maybe a little bit into July. But say you are producing strawberries and it costs you $1 a pint to produce them, and you can sell some at the farmer's market and for $4. But the grocery store is after you to sell some to them too, because they can bring people in if people know they have fresh strawberries. So they want some fresh strawberries, and you can sell them a lot more. And as you can see by the chart, you can sell them 300. But you're a price taker at that point. You know, they aren't going to pay you know, they're not going to pay farmers market price because they need a markup too. So if it costs you $1 to produce them, as you can see, the farmers market sales make $108 and the grocery store makes $150. But if those strawberries cost you $1.25 to produce, it's really going to reduce your margin of profit. But at the same time, they are perishable and you have to get them out. So you might want to think about, and I'm sure that Carla and others would suggest having different varieties of strawberries to extend the season and not have them all come at the same time. And there's probably many ways you can do it, but still in all, it is a perishable product and you do have to sell it when they're ready. So push the pencil when it comes to pricing, analyze what it costs you to produce your product, do the market research, and find out information with respect to competition, market saturation, and product differentiation. And consider your time contributions in various market channels and make the marketing channel work for you, or change the way you market the product to reflect the price that you charge. And you can certainly be a combination. You can use combinations of things to sell your products. Maybe you're a price taker in this market and a price setter over here. Make sure you're pricing according to your costs with respect to your market, not just once, but regularly in order to make a profit. So we do have a survey for you. It will be put in the chat box soon, but let us know if you what you thought of the presentation, and if there's anything else that I can do for you personally to help you with your pricing your products. And if there are any questions, I'm certainly happy to take them.